At 2:15 on June 24, 1944, Lieutenant Commander Richard O'Kane pressed his eye to the periscope of USS Tang, following 4 Japanese cargo ships as they slid through the darkness, 3,200 yards ahead. He worked the firing angles in silence while the convoy moved steadily on. He was 33 years old, a veteran of 2 completed war patrols. His teacher was gone. His mentor was dead. The enemy formation was formidable, 6 large transports wrapped in the protection of 16 escort destroyers. O'Kane had learned the art of submarine combat under Dudley Morton aboard USS Wahoo, a commander who rejected safe thinking. Morton drilled into him an approach that ran against Navy manuals: strike from inside the convoy, not from the edges where submarines were expected to lurk. Penetrate the formation. Fire forward. Fire aft. Let confusion become concealment. Morton was no longer alive to prove it again. Wahoo was lost 3 months after O'Kane departed to take command of Tang. In October 1943, 79 men disappeared beneath the Sea of Japan. The Pacific Fleet's most daring submarine commander never returned. What O'Kane carried with him now was more than a doctrine. It was an obligation. Tang's first patrol in February hinted at what was possible. 5 enemy ships destroyed. 16 torpedoes fired. 16 hits. But the Imperial Japanese Navy adjusted quickly. Convoys gained heavier escorts. Merchant captains zigzagged relentlessly. Depth charges arrived sooner, closer, harder. April's second patrol produced nothing. No attacks, no sinkings. Instead, Tang pulled 22 downed Navy pilots from the sea near Truk during carrier operations. Necessary work. Valuable lives saved. 0 tonnage. This third patrol could not end that way. O'Kane brought Tang into the Yellow Sea, the narrow, dangerous waters between Korea and China, where Japanese supply routes ran thick. From Manchuria to China, troop transports and cargo ships pushed south in constant streams. On June 21st, Tang intercepted a lone freighter. 1 torpedo at close range sent Nanshin Maru to the bottom in 4 minutes. 2 days later, another solitary target fell. Nikken Maru, struck from 750 yards and torn cleanly in half. But O'Kane was hunting something larger. He wanted the formations other commanders avoided, the heavily guarded convoys. And now, at 2:15 on June 24th, he had found one. 6 cargo ships, 16 destroyers, enough steel and fuel to reshape the patrol entirely. Tang crept closer. 2,800 yards. 2,400. O'Kane ordered battle stations. Fire control rooms calculated rapidly. Torpedo men stood rigid at their tubes. At 2,000 yards, O'Kane made his decision. Surface attack. Engines surged. Tang burst from the darkness and drove straight into the heart of the convoy. No American submarine commander attacked this way. It shattered every accepted rule of survival. O'Kane fired 3 torpedoes at the nearest cargo ship, shifted aim instantly, and launched 3 more at the second. The explosions came before confirmation. 2 cargo ships erupted into flame. Then O'Kane realized something was wrong, something far better than expected. For ships were burning. The spread had traveled wider than predicted. The torpedoes smashed through their primary targets and continued on, striking 2 freighters positioned behind them. Tamahoko Maru, Tainan Maru, Nasusen Maru, Kenichi Maru. In 90 seconds, 16,292 tons of enemy shipping were destroyed. Tang plunged beneath the surface as escorts converged. For 20 relentless minutes, depth charges battered the hull. Steel screamed. The ocean roared. 4 ships sunk in a single attack, the most destructive strike ever achieved by an American submarine. If you want to see how O'Kane turned this moment into the highest-scoring submarine career in history, support the story. Every forgotten victory survives only if it's remembered. And now, back to O'Kane. That night rewrote everything. O'Kane proved that Morton's aggressive doctrine was not reckless, it was devastating. For the remainder of June, Tang hunted without restraint. On June 25th, another freighter went down. On June 30th, 2 more ships vanished within 12 hours. By July 3rd, Tang turned for home with 10 enemy vessels destroyed, totaling 39,000 tons, the most successful submarine patrol ever completed. August brought O'Kane's 4th patrol, adding 5 more ships to his tally. His 5th patrol in September would surpass every remaining record. Yet it would also end with 24 torpedoes fired, 22 flawless hits, 1 miss, and a final weapon that curved left at 46 knots, racing back toward Tang through the darkness. On July 12, 1944, Tang reached Pearl Harbor. 10 ships sunk, 39,000 tons destroyed, 34 days at sea. As the submarine moored, Admiral Charles Lockwood stood waiting on the dock to greet Richard O'Kane. The commander of the submarine force had examined every patrol report in detail. No American submarine had ever returned from a single mission claiming 10 confirmed sinkings. Admiral Lockwood put Richard O'Kane forward for the Navy Cross. Yet statistics alone failed to capture what made the patrol extraordinary. O'Kane's methods ran directly against accepted doctrine. Submarines were expected to strike from outside convoy screens, remain at periscope depth, fire from cautious distances, and dive immediately after launching torpedoes. O'Kane did the opposite. He surfaced inside enemy formations. He fired at point-blank range. He stayed up long enough to engage multiple targets before disappearing beneath the waves. Every convention Dudley Morton had shattered aboard Wahoo, O'Kane now shattered aboard Tang. Some officers dismissed the approach as reckless. Others recognized it as a fundamental shift in submarine warfare. Tang spent 3 weeks in overhaul. Engines were serviced. Fresh torpedoes were loaded. 2 sailors requested transfers and were replaced. O'Kane's aggressive command style demanded more than everyone was willing to give. On August 4th, Tang slipped back to sea on her 4th war patrol, bound for the waters off Honshu near Japan's home islands. This patrol zone was far more dangerous. Operating close to Japan meant constant aerial surveillance, thicker destroyer screens, and anti-submarine crews trained by hard experience. Submarines assigned to these waters faced risks several times greater than those patrolling farther south. O'Kane paid no attention to risk charts. His concern was tonnage. On August 10th, Tang intercepted a tanker near Omizaki. O'Kane fired 3 torpedoes. All 3 missed as the ship zigzagged erratically. Escorts closed in, forcing Tang deep. It was the first miss of O'Kane's career, and it would not be the last. The following day brought another convoy, 2 freighters with 2 escorts. O'Kane targeted the larger ship. 3 torpedoes struck home. The explosion was so violent that fragments rained down onto Tang's deck. Ruko Maru, 6,000 tons, vanished in minutes. 5 minutes later, O'Kane shifted to the second freighter. 2 torpedoes fired. 2 hits. Nansatumaru slipped beneath the surface, sinking stern first. On August 22nd, a patrol yacht appeared in the periscope lens. A small target. O'Kane launched a single torpedo. It struck cleanly, tearing the vessel apart. The next day, Tang shadowed a large transport. Japanese servicemen in white uniforms crowded the superstructure. O'Kane fired 3 torpedoes. 2 detonated beneath the stack. Takushi Maru, 8,135 tons, was destroyed. August 25th marked the patrol's final engagement. A tanker with a single escort entered range. O'Kane expended his last 3 torpedoes. The tanker, his 8th kill of the patrol, Nango Nano Maru, erupted in a massive explosion. The escort fled the scene. Tang returned to Pearl Harbor on September 3rd. 5 ships sunk in a month. O'Kane's total now stood at 20 enemy vessels destroyed across 4 patrols. Most submarine commanders completed 6 to 8 patrols over the entire war. O'Kane had reached 20 sinkings in just 7 months. Admiral Lockwood offered him safety, a shore assignment, a teaching post at the submarine school, a staff position at headquarters. Any role that removed him from combat. O'Kane declined. He asked for 1 more patrol. Lockwood approved the request. Tang was scheduled to depart on September 24th. Her destination was the Formosa Strait, the most heavily defended stretch of water in the Western Pacific. O'Kane spent the next 3 weeks preparing. He memorized convoy routes, studied Japanese escort behavior, and calculated torpedo solutions for the narrow channel between Formosa and mainland China. 24 Mark 18 electric torpedoes were loaded aboard Tang, the Navy's newest model. They left no wake and were far harder for enemy lookouts to detect. But the Mark 18 carried a flaw. In fewer than 1% of firings, the steering mechanism failed. When it did, the torpedo turned in a circle. Before dawn on September 24th, Tang slipped out of Pearl Harbor with 87 men aboard. Only 9 would ever return. She refueled at Midway Island on September 27th. O'Kane reviewed his orders one last time. The patrol area lay between northwestern Formosa and the Chinese coast. Japanese convoys were forced through this narrow corridor, but reaching the hunting grounds required passing through waters the enemy controlled completely. Minefields stretched 60 miles northeast from Formosa, forming a deadly barrier across the approaches. Japanese patrol craft swept the area without pause. Any American submarine attempting to penetrate these waters faced detection rates nearly 3 times higher than in standard patrol zones. O'Kane had a decision to make. He could join a coordinated transit group under Commander Coy aboard USS Silversides, crossing the passage alongside 3 other submarines, shared risk, mutual protection. Or he could go alone. O'Kane chose solitude. Tang departed Midway on September 27th, steering west with no planned contact with other American vessels. Radio transmissions were forbidden unless absolutely unavoidable. Complete silence rendered Tang invisible to Japanese direction-finding stations. For 12 days, the submarine threaded its way through enemy-controlled seas. Early October passed in taut quiet. Sonar teams strained for the faintest echo of patrol boats. Radar operators searched the sky for aircraft. The crew settled into a relentless rhythm, 4 hours on watch, for hours of uneasy rest. October 10th arrived with no alarms. Tang slipped into the operational zone undetected. O'Kane eased the boat to periscope depth and scanned the Formosa Strait. The sea lay empty. No silhouettes. No smoke. No movement. Then, at 2,200 hours, radar reported multiple contacts. A convoy. O'Kane closed the range. Through the periscope, he identified 2 medium freighters pushing south along the China coast. Tang surfaced. Battle stations were ordered. At 23:30, for torpedoes left the tubes. 2 struck the lead freighter. Joshua erupted in flame. The second vessel, Amaru, took a single hit amidships and went down in 6 minutes. 2 ships destroyed. The 5th patrol had drawn blood. Tang dove and slipped away as Japanese escorts reacted. Depth charges pounded the water for 40 minutes, none detonating close enough to do damage. When Tang returned to the surface at 0300, the burning wreckage had already disappeared beneath the waves. For the next 13 days, Tang prowled the strait. October 11th through October 22nd yielded nothing of consequence. Small fishing craft, isolated patrol boats, targets unworthy of torpedoes. O'Kane pushed farther north, closer to Formosa, closer to Japanese airfields. Each mile increased the danger. On October 23rd, at 1,700 hours, radar picked up a massive formation. O'Kane counted carefully. 3 tankers, 1 transport, 1 freighter, at least 8 escort destroyers, possibly more. It was the largest convoy Tang had encountered since the Yellow Sea. Battle stations were called. This strike would come after dark. A surface attack, repeating the tactics that had shattered convoys in June. But this formation was different. Denser escorts, tighter spacing, captains hardened by previous encounters with American submarines. For 6 hours, Tang shadowed the convoy. O'Kane refined approach vectors. Fire control computed firing solutions across multiple targets. Torpedo men stood ready at their tubes. At 2,300 hours, O'Kane gave the command. Surface. Full speed. Tang burst from the night and drove straight into the convoy. The darkness erupted into chaos. O'Kane fired first at the nearest tanker. 2 torpedoes struck beneath the stack and engine room. The explosion flared so brightly it lit the entire formation. He shifted immediately, 1 torpedo into the stern of the center tanker. A clean hit. 2 more torpedoes streaked toward the farthest tanker. Both detonated under the engine space. 3 tankers burned. The entire attack took 90 seconds. Then a Japanese transport turned directly toward Tang, charging at full speed in an attempt to ram. There was no time to submerge. O'Kane ordered emergency maneuvers. Tang's diesels howled as the submarine swung hard to port. The transport loomed just 300 yards away, closing fast. Tang cut inside the transport's turning circle. The enemy captain tried to correct, too late. The transport's mass carried it past Tang's stern, missing by less than 50 yards. But its new course aimed straight at one of the burning tankers. The transport and tanker collided with a thunderous crash that rolled across the water, steel screaming as hulls tore into one another. O'Kane didn't linger to watch the wreckage unfold. He swung Tang to bring the stern tubes to bear on the two crippled ships. Two torpedoes streaked out. Both found their marks. The transport and the tanker sank together, dragged under in the same violent moment. 5 ships destroyed in a single attack. A destroyer immediately surged toward Tang's position. O'Kane ordered a crash dive. Ballast tanks flooded, and the submarine slipped under in 45 seconds. Depth charges followed, 37 detonations over 20 minutes. The nearest blast shattered light fixtures in the control room. When the sea finally fell silent, O'Kane brought Tang cautiously back to periscope depth. Dawn was approaching. The remnants of the convoy had scattered in every direction. Burning oil spread across the surface for miles. O'Kane took Tang deep again and turned east. The crew needed sleep. He needed to assess what remained. 18 torpedoes had been fired on the 5th patrol. 6 remained. October 24th arrived. At 0600, Tang surfaced. Morning light revealed empty sea. O'Kane altered course north along the China coast. At 1400, the lookout spotted smoke on the horizon. Another convoy. O'Kane tracked the formation through the periscope. Smaller than the last, but more tightly guarded. 3 cargo ships, 1 tanker, multiple destroyers holding close formation. Tang shadowed them at periscope depth through the afternoon. O'Kane waited. Night attacks had succeeded twice already. They would succeed again. 1800 hours, sunset. 1900, full darkness. 2200, battle stations. At 2300, Tang surfaced 1500 yards from the convoy. O'Kane lined up on the lead cargo ship. 2 torpedoes fired. Both struck. The freighter snapped in 2. Tang swung toward the next target. 2 more torpedoes launched. One hit the cargo ship's stern. The vessel listed heavily but refused to sink. Only 2 torpedoes remained. A destroyer suddenly detected Tang and charged at flank speed. The distance collapsed. 800 yards, then 700. O'Kane aimed his final 2 torpedoes at the oncoming escort. Both were fired. Both missed. The destroyer was too close, too fast. The torpedoes had no time or distance to arm. O'Kane ordered a dive. Depth charges slammed into the water. 53 explosions, the most violent barrage of the patrol. Tang endured it, but when the ocean finally calmed, the submarine was empty of weapons. 2 hours later, O'Kane surfaced. The convoy was gone. 1 ship sunk, 2 damaged. It wasn't enough. He reviewed the torpedo inventory one last time. Every tube empty. Every torpedo expended. Then someone noticed the mistake. 1 Mark 18 torpedo remained in the aft room. Tube 8. The last weapon aboard Tang. O'Kane scanned the dark horizon. Dawn was 3 hours away. If another convoy appeared, there would be one final opportunity. At 0200 on October 25th, radar picked up multiple contacts, 5 ships moving south. O'Kane called battle stations for the final time. 1 torpedo, 1 chance, 1 attack that would either seal the most successful patrol in submarine warfare history or end it unfinished. O'Kane ordered Tang to surface and drove in. The last torpedo was already sliding into tube 8. Tang closed at flank speed. Through the periscope, O'Kane identified the formation: 2 cargo ships, 2 transports, 1 large tanker, destroyers guarding the flanks. Range, 2,200 yards. O'Kane climbed to the bridge. A night surface attack, the same brutal method that had worked on October 23rd. Drive straight into the formation. Fire at close range. Let confusion shield the escape. Tang surged forward. 1,800 yards. 1,500. The convoy held its course, unaware. 1,200 yards. O'Kane ordered the first shot. Tube 1 fired. The torpedo ran clean and true. 20 seconds later, the night erupted. The transport's stern lifted clear of the water as secondary explosions ripped through its holds. O'Kane shifted immediately. The second transport crossed Tang's bow. Tube 2 fired. A direct hit amidships. The ship began to list at once. Now 1,000 yards from the convoy's center, the tanker loomed ahead, the largest target left. O'Kane aimed for the engine room. Tube 3 fired. The torpedo struck beneath the stack. A column of flames soared 300 feet into the air as aviation fuel ignited. Tang turned hard to port. Two cargo ships ran parallel to the submarine's new course. A perfect firing position. O'Kane fired tubes 4 and 5 in rapid succession. Both torpedoes struck home. One cargo ship detonated in a violent explosion. The second began to sink bow first, slipping under as flames spread across the water. 5 ships had been hit in the final attack. 23 torpedoes had been fired during the patrol. 22 had found their targets. Only one had missed, the shots taken at the charging destroyer. Yet Tang still carried one Mark 18 torpedo, the last weapon aboard. A destroyer peeled out of the formation and drove straight toward Tang. The range collapsed quickly, 800 yards. The escort's deck guns opened fire. Shells splashed close to the conning tower, spraying seawater across the bridge. O'Kane trained the final torpedo on the oncoming ship. Fire control worked frantically. Speed, 26 knots. Range, 700 yards. Bearing, 035 degrees. At 2:30 on October 25, 1944, O'Kane gave the command. Fire tube 8. The Mark 18 leapt from the tube. Its electric motor engaged instantly. No wake. No flash. A silent run. For 3 seconds, the torpedo held its course perfectly, racing toward the destroyer. Then it broke the surface. O'Kane watched through binoculars as the propeller rose above the waterline. The torpedo veered, not a gradual turn, but a hard, unnatural arc. It curved sharply to the left, back toward Tang. A circular run. O'Kane shouted orders. Emergency power. Full right rudder. Tang heeled as the diesels roared, screws churning the sea at maximum thrust. The torpedo completed its turn and now charged directly at the submarine. 400 yards. Speed, 46 knots. 300 yards. Tang could not turn fast enough. The maneuver required a full minute. The torpedo would reach them in 15 seconds. 200 yards. A crewman on the bridge saw it clearly now, a white phosphorescent trail slicing through the dark water, aimed straight at the aft torpedo room. 100 yards. O'Kane ordered everyone to brace. Some men leapt overboard. Others clung to stanchions and railings. Torpedo man Hayes Trucker stood frozen on the bridge, watching as Tang's own weapon closed the final distance. 50 yards. 20 seconds had passed since launch, the same time it had taken the other 23 torpedoes to reach their targets. 20 yards. The Mark 18 struck Tang's stern 3 feet below the waterline, detonating directly beside the aft torpedo room where it had been loaded only minutes earlier. The blast ripped through 3 compartments in an instant. Men were hurled against bulkheads. In the control room, the shock punched up through steel decking. Lights shattered. Circuit breakers sparked. The stern dropped immediately. Water poured into the aft torpedo room within seconds, then surged into the after engine room, then the maneuvering room. 3 compartments were lost before damage control could respond. Tang began sinking stern first. 9 officers and enlisted men were on the bridge when the torpedo hit. O'Kane was among them. The explosion threw 3 men into the sea. 6 remained as the submarine slid under. There were 180 feet of water below. Tang sank in 45 seconds. At 2:31, barely a minute after the impact, the submarine struck the bottom. The collision sent shockwaves through what remained intact. Men trapped forward felt the jolt as the hull slammed into the seafloor. Of the 9 men thrown clear from the bridge, only 3 survived long enough in the water to be rescued. O'Kane was one. Lieutenant Lawrence Savadkin was another. Motor machinist's mate Jesse DeLuva was the third. 1 more man escaped from inside. Lieutenant Junior Grade Henry Flanagan forced his way out of the flooded conning tower, fought through rising water, and broke the surface. 4 survivors floated amid burning oil and debris. Japanese destroyer escorts closed in on their position. Inside Tang, 30 men were still alive in the forward torpedo room. Everything aft had flooded completely. 78 men had died in the explosion or drowned in the wrecked compartments. The survivors faced an impossible choice: remain inside and suffocate as the air ran out, or attempt an escape from 180 feet using Momsen lungs. The Momsen lung was an emergency breathing device developed in 1929 after the loss of USS S4. It consisted of a rubber breathing bag connected to a mouthpiece. A sailor filled the bag with oxygen, clamped the mouthpiece between his teeth, and swam upward. Exhaled air passed through a carbon dioxide absorbent, allowing the diver to breathe repeatedly during ascent. No one had ever successfully escaped a sunken submarine using malfunction lungs under combat conditions. Training exercises were conducted in shallow water, under controlled circumstances. Tang rested at 180 feet, 3 times deeper than any practice escape. The men inside Tang began preparing for the end. Classified papers were burned. Code books were destroyed. The forward escape trunk was opened. Then they waited. Above them, a Japanese patrol vessel circled, releasing depth charges. The explosions shook the wreck and ignited an electrical fire in the forward battery compartment. Heat built rapidly. Paint blistered and peeled from the bulkheads. By 0400, 2 hours after Tang had struck bottom, the patrol vessel finally moved off. The escape attempt began. Motor machinist mate Clayton Decker volunteered to go first. He secured his malfunction lung, climbed into the escape trunk, and sealed the hatch. Water flooded in. Pressure equalized. Decker released the buoy line, opened the outer hatch, and started upward. The ascent was slow and deliberate, 10 feet at a time. Stop. Count to 10. Move again. At 60 feet, breathing became painful. The sensation passed. At 40 feet, moonlight filtered faintly through the water. Decker broke the surface at 4:15, 1 hour and 45 minutes after Tang had sunk. 12 more men followed him through the escape trunk. 13 attempted the climb. Only 8 reached the surface alive. 5 died during the ascent. Lungs ruptured, air embolisms formed, nitrogen overtook their bodies. By 0600, 9 men floated in the oil-darkened water. O'Kane, Savadkin, Flanagan, DeLuva, Decker, radioman Floyd Caverly, bosun's mate William Lee Bold, torpedo man Hayes Trucker, and torpedo man Pete Narawansky. 9 survivors out of 87. At 7:30, a Japanese destroyer escort arrived. Sailors aboard Tatsutake hauled the Americans from the sea one by one. O'Kane climbed aboard last. After 8 hours in the water, his legs barely responded. On deck, Japanese sailors formed 2 lines. The Americans were forced to walk between them. Fists struck faces. Boots slammed into ribs. Clubs cracked across shoulders and backs. Then O'Kane understood. Japanese survivors from the ship's Tang had sunk crowded the destroyer's deck. Burned men, wounded sailors, men pulled from flaming tankers, and shattered freighters. They recognized the submarine insignia on the Americans' uniforms. The attacks intensified. O'Kane later wrote that once he realized the men beating them were survivors of his torpedoes, the violence became easier to endure. These men had every reason to hate them. The beatings lasted 3 hours. Afterward, guards locked the Americans in a storage compartment below deck. There was no food, no water, no medical care. Tatsutake steamed for Formosa. The prisoners remained in the hold for 4 days. On October 29th, guards transferred them to a transport bound for Japan. The voyage took 2 weeks. On November 13th, the ship docked at Yokohama. From there, the prisoners were taken 30 miles southwest of Tokyo to the Ofuna Interrogation Center. Ofuna was a secret facility. The International Red Cross did not know it existed. Japan never reported its location or its prisoners. Men sent there officially did not exist. The 9 survivors from Tang joined 60 other Allied prisoners. Navy pilots shot down over the Pacific. 29 crewmen captured after bombing raids, submariners from other lost boats. Interrogations began immediately. Japanese intelligence officers questioned O'Kane for 6 hours a day. They demanded convoy routes, radio frequencies, submarine tactics, recognition codes. O'Kane gave nothing beyond his name, rank, and serial number. Pressure increased. Food was reduced to a single bowl of rice per day. Prisoners were forbidden to speak to one another. Solitary confinement stretched into weeks. December arrived. American B-29s appeared over Tokyo almost daily. Ofuna had no air raid shelters. Prisoners remained locked in their cells as bombs fell. Explosions struck within 2 miles of the camp, shaking walls and rattling steel doors as the war closed in around them. January 1945 brought new orders. Guards transferred the survivors of Tang from Ofuna to a Mori prison camp on Tokyo Bay. Omori held roughly 800 Allied prisoners. Conditions were marginally better than at Ofuna. 2 bowls of rice per day instead of 1, and permission to speak, but overcrowded barracks bred disease. Dysentery spread. Beriberi took hold. Pneumonia followed. There were no medical supplies. Men died every week from starvation and infections left untreated. O'Kane watched his crew fade. Deluva developed beriberi. Caverly came down with pneumonia. Every one of the 9 men lost between 30 and 50 pounds. By spring, American bombing intensified. B-29 struck Tokyo night after night. Entire neighborhoods burned. Guards grew unpredictable. Rations shrank further. Summer brought whispers. Germany had surrendered in May. Okinawa had fallen in June. An invasion of Japan seemed inevitable. On August 6th, guards spoke of something different. 1 aircraft, 1 bomb. Hiroshima was gone. 3 days later, another single bomb erased Nagasaki. On August 15th, Emperor Hirohito's voice crackled over the radio, announcing Japan's surrender. The war was over. American forces reached Amori on August 29th. Medics examined the prisoners. Most required immediate hospitalization. On September 2nd, Japan signed a surrender aboard USS Missouri. 3 days later, the 9 survivors of Tang boarded a hospital ship bound for Pearl Harbor. They had endured 10 months of captivity. All 9 lived to see home. Tang did not. She remained on the floor of the Formosa Strait, with 78 crewmen who never escaped. O'Kane returned to the United States in October 1945. Doctors treated him for malnutrition and injuries sustained during imprisonment. He spent 6 weeks recovering at Naval Hospital San Diego. On March 27, 1946, President Harry Truman awarded him the Medal of Honor on the White House lawn. The citation recognized his actions during Tang's final engagements on October 23 and 24. Post-war analysis of Japanese shipping records forced a revision of Tang's combat record. The original credit, 31 ships sunk for 227,000 tons, was corrected to 33 ships totaling 116,454 tons. By both number of vessels and total tonnage, Tang became the most successful American submarine of the war. Tautog ranked 2nd in ships sunk. Flasher ranked 2nd in tonnage. O'Kane stood alone at the top among American submarine commanders. Tang received 2 Presidential Unit citations and 4 battle stars. O'Kane remained in naval service after the war. He commanded a submarine tender, testified at Japanese war crimes trials, served as executive officer aboard another tender, led Submarine Division 32, attended the Armed Forces Staff College, taught at the Submarine School in New London, and later commanded a 2nd submarine tender. He retired in 1957 with the rank of Rear Admiral. The tactics O'Kane inherited from Morton became standard doctrine: surface attacks, aggressive positioning, strikes from within convoy formations. Every submarine commander after 1944 studied Tang's patrol reports. O'Kane wrote 2 books. Clear the Bridge chronicled Tang's war patrols. Wahoo recounted his service under Morton. Both became required reading at the Naval Academy. The Navy later named a guided missile destroyer in his honor. Commissioned in 1999, the ship remains in active service. O'Kane died on February 16, 1994, at the age of 83. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Tang's wreck has never been found. The submarine rests in 180 feet of water off the Chinese coast. Political tensions in the Formosa Strait prevented salvage efforts. The National World War II Museum in New Orleans created an interactive exhibit titled Final Mission, USS Tang. Visitors step inside a recreation of the submarine's interior and receive cards representing one of the 87 crewmen. The exhibit recreates the events of October 24th and 25th, including the circular run of the final torpedo. Tang's casualty list holds 78 names: men killed by the explosion, men drowned in flooded compartments, men lost attempting escape from 180 feet below. The 9 survivors carried those names with them for the rest of their lives.